People have been nicknaming cars ever since the first one was built. We've had Godzilla, the Terminator, Flying Brick, Clown Shoe, Screaming Chicken, Moby Dick, Big Nasty, Rambo Lambo, Plastic Fantastic, Bread Van, Widowmaker, and many more. Sometimes the new moniker even takes over from the actual name, like how the Volkswagen Type 1 became known as the Beetle. But this story is about two pigs, rejected for their appearance, that went on to leave their mark in 1971, which just happened to be the year of the pig. This is the story of the Mercedes AMG Red Pig and the Porsche Pink Pig. This story stems from the worst disaster in motorsports history. In 1955, the 24 Hours of Le Mans had a record turnout, with around 300,000 people coming to the north of France to see who could cover the most distance in 24 hours of racing. Since the start of Le Mans in 1923, the cars had gotten extremely fast, while safety regulations had lagged behind, with the track, pits, and grandstands all jammed in far too narrow of a space. 35 laps in, the leading Jag decided to pull into the pits. Jaguar was the first team to bring disc brakes to Le Mans and had a pretty advanced setup by 1955. There was no deceleration lane, so when the Jag slammed on the brakes to enter the pits, the Austin Healey behind couldn't stop in time and swerved to miss the Jag, instead hitting the 300 SLR Mercedes driven by Pierre Levay. All Pierre could do was warn his Mercedes teammate behind him with the hand signal before his car was launched over 260 feet before hitting a concrete stairwell. The Mercedes nearly disintegrated on impact, but the engine, radiator, hood, and other parts continued on through the crowd of people. As a result, over 80 were killed, and another 180 were injured. Shockingly, the race continued, but Mercedes decided to withdraw, not just from the race, but from all motorsports. This disaster, while unimaginably terrible, led to improved safety regulations which have saved countless lives since. Pierre's co-driver, John Fitch, became obsessed with safety both on and off the track, even inventing the Fitch barrier used on highways today. There were other ripples from this disaster too, like the ones that reached two engineers at Mercedes. Hans Elfrecht and Erhard Melcher had been working on racing engines for Mercedes until the company discontinued all motorsports. But that didn't stop them from continuing their work during their free time at Elfrecht's house in Grosse Spa. Their engines gained a reputation after powering cars such as a colleague's car, which had won 10 times in the German Touring Car Championship. Elfrecht wanted more though, and left Mercedes in 1966 to start his own venture. He persuaded Melcher to join him, and with their start in Grosse Spa, he named the company AMG. To put their name on the map, AMG decided to build a car to compete at the 24 Hours of Spa in 1971. The cars to beat were all lightweight sports cars, like the BMW 2800 CS, Alfa Romeo GTA, Ford Capri RS, Camaros, Mustangs, and even a couple tiny Moskvich 412s made an appearance. But AMG took a different route and entered a damaged 300 SEL 6.3. When the W108 and 109 Mercedes came out, the most powerful engine you could get was a measly 170 horsepower 6-cylinder, at least until a very special engineer named Erich Waxenberger decided to see what would happen if he swapped in a V8 from a 600 Grosser. The Grosser was a car which broke a lot of records. It was the most expensive, had windows which could chop your hands off, and featured the loudest horn ever made.
Ready, steady. Now that's a horn.
Grosser is German for big, and this car was enormous. At nearly 21 feet long and 7,000 pounds, these behemoth dictatormobiles weren't exactly quick. But when Waxenberger shoved that 247 horsepower V8 in a 250 SEL which had fallen off the assembly line, people noticed, including his boss. His boss presented the car to the board, and while there were some concerns about it being too fast for their brand, which had pivoted away from sports cars, eventually they decided to go ahead with the project and make the fastest production sedan in the world. But how would the car do at the track? Well, it'd need a lot more love. The car still weighed as much as a Rhino at nearly 4,000 pounds. The two AMG engineers already had a reputation for their race engines, so it's no surprise they were able to raise the displacement to 6.8 liters and squeeze out over 420 horsepower. For the rest of the package, AMG got a ton of help from Erich Waxenberger himself, still working from inside Mercedes. Waxenberger loved racing and was a talented driver, although Mercedes' insurance company specifically requested he stop testing vehicles. In addition to pushing vehicles to their limit, he often pushed his own agenda too, and almost got approval to enter the 24 Hours of Spa in 1969. For better or worse, he was shut down over safety concerns and the risk of Mercedes being involved in another very public accident. So instead, Waxenberger turned his efforts to AMG and secretly let them utilize Mercedes' resources to develop their car. Erich even tested the AMG using his very secret undercover alias, Enrico. He had all kinds of crazy ideas and helped tune the air suspension for racing and modified the automatic transmission to shift like a sequential. They swapped out the doors for aluminum ones, but left most of the interior, including the heavy leather seats, chrome, and wooden dash. Some consider this car to be one of the first sleepers, but there were definitely some tells, like the fender flares, which housed the super wide 15-inch magnesium rims. When AMG rolled into Spa, their first ever race as a company, spectators laughed at how out of place the porky 300 was amidst the sleek sports cars, and called it Die Rote Sau, the red sow. A sow is a female pig, following the nautical convention that boats should be female. But despite the enormous weight of the car and drag coefficient akin to a pickup truck, the AMG team was quietly confident about their big debut. While this was the first time the world would really see AMG, Porsche was already a force of nature in endurance racing, and had just won the 24 Hours of Le Mans the year prior with the 917. The 917 used one of the flat 6 engines Porsche was famous for, slapped to another one to make a monstrous flat 12. This engine was on another level, reportedly 30 km an hour faster than any other car at Le Mans down the straight. It was actually too fast. In the past, teams had focused on low drag aero to increase their speed, but with the car already so fast, the lack of aero was causing significant lift and severely hampering the handling. A few teams were just starting to grasp the importance of downforce, so Porsche began to experiment themselves, building all kinds of different variants of the 917, like the 917K and 917L. The K and L stood for Kurzheck and Langheck, German for short tail and long tail. The short tail had more downforce, so it could handle better on the tight courses, while the long tail was built for Le Mans in mind. The idea that the slippery, low drag variant would be much faster on the long straights, like the 6 km long Mulsanne straight. Surprisingly, it was the 917K, the short tail, which managed to win Le Mans in 1970. As although its top speed was lower, it managed to make it up in the turns, and beat the 917L, which took second. With these results in mind, Porsche began experimenting with the hybrid between the two models. In 1971, the team cobbled together the 917-20, which was wider with a shorter nose and tail, while still producing less drag than the short tail. This sounded great in theory, but while not everyone liked the look of the car post-surgery. The rumor is that the sponsor, Martini and Rossi, didn't want their iconic striped livery associated with the car, so they handed it over to Porsche designer Anatoly Lapin. Breaking another stereotype, Lapin flashed some rare German humor and painted the car pink with labeled body parts like butcher-style cuts. The design was unlike anything seen at Le Mans before, and the fans loved it, giving the car names like the Pink Pig and Big Bertha. It even had a little white pig on top of the fender, with the caption, Der Trüffeljäger von Zuffenhausen, the truffle hunter of Zuffenhausen. On top of the great names, the aero actually seemed to be working, and without any testing at all, the Pink Pig set the fastest pre-race qualifying time. In 1971, Porsche 917 set new records for the fastest qualifying lap, fastest in-race lap, highest top speed, a blistering 362 km an hour, and longest distance covered. Even more amazing is that many of these records weren't broken for decades, like the distance record, which wasn't broken until 2010, or the lap record, which is still technically held by the 917 thanks to track changes since then. Unfortunately, the lack of testing meant the Big Pig had all kinds of issues. Ultimately, the lack of downforce is thought to have put extra strain on the brakes, which weren't sufficiently cooled and caused the Pig to crash out. While the Pink Pig didn't get to finish the race, a month later in Spa, its red, porcine cousin was about to have some better luck. When the flag dropped in 1971, the Red Pig immediately warped public perception. The combination of heavy weight, poor aero, and an automatic transmission didn't seem to hamper the Mercedes on the straights, as the car ate up competitors, especially on the uphills. The car also handled extremely well, with its wide, mismatched tires and trick suspension allowing it to take many of the corners flat out. Unfortunately, it wasn't all good though, and the poor brakes had a really hard time slowing the big Mercedes down. Then, to get back to speed, an enormous amount of fuel was burned to push the near 2-ton hunk of metal around the track. This was far from ideal in any event, but especially in a 24-hour race when the thirsty pig had to stop far more frequently than other cars. But despite these huge disadvantages, the underdog Mercedes shocked everyone and actually won its class. It even came second overall, just 3 laps behind the winning Ford Capri RS 26000. Many feel the Red Pig could have won it all if it wasn't such a sleeper and the team had trimmed off a bit more weight. Regardless, this upset broke the stereotype that these hefty Mercedes couldn't be fast, and the 2 AMG engineers suddenly had an influx of eyes and new customers lining up. The kickstart from this one race and one unlikely victor would propel AMG out of the shadows and give them the resources to go on to make more legendary cars, like the Hammer, the fastest sedan in the world at that time, and the CLK GTR, one of the most insane road-going cars ever made. By this point, Mercedes was back in the motorsports world and had been working with AMG for a while. So in 1999, they became a majority owner in the engineering firm, before becoming the sole owner in 2005. To celebrate this occasion, Mercedes knew there was only one car for the job and began searching for the Red Pig. The last anyone had heard, the beloved AMG had retired from racing, but that didn't mean it enjoyed a relaxing retirement. Thanks to the unusual pairing of the heavy chassis and extreme power for its day, the Red Pig was actually bought by the French firm Matra, who used the car to test prototype tires for fighter jets. To do so, they cut a hole in the car to mount the landing gear, which could push down the tires with extreme force at high speeds, a task no other car could do as well. Apparently, it carried out its job diligently, before finally giving up and disappearing. Despite all of Mercedes' resources, they were unable to hunt down the Red Pig, so they made their own. Using the original blueprints, they pieced together a replica which they continue to modify to be more accurate as they source more parts. This car was driven in events all over and was a huge success, so Mercedes even made a second replica for static display. This car has inspired countless other builds and designs too, an attempt to capture some of what Alfresh and Melcher forged in 1971. So, while the original Red Pig may be gone, it's certainly not forgotten, and neither is the Pink Pig. Porsche still has the original 917-20 in their collection, and it remains an all-time favorite. The Pink Pig has become iconic and inspired designs all around the world, such as liveries, art pieces, and even Porsche has tapped into it, selling an entire collection of Pink Pig items, such as car covers, oil stool drums, and of course, a piggy bank. In 2018, the livery was reborn on a 911 GT3 for the 24 Hours of Le Mans yet again, and this time, it won. Just recently, Ken Block and Hoonigan announced the Hoona Pegasus, an insane 1,400 horsepower mid-engine monster built for the Pikes Peak hill climb, again inspired by the Pink Pig. So that's the tale of 2 German pigs, both unlikely underdogs that went on to change the automotive world in their own way. Which one is your favorite? While I'm a huge Porsche fan and the 917-20 is awesome, both as a car and with a unique design, I think the story of the Red Pig is just amazing and takes the cake for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks to your support and great ideas, I'm partnered on YouTube now. It's not much, but it's been really rewarding for me just to see you all enjoying the videos. If you have any other interesting automotive stories, I'd love to dive into them and continue learning how to share them here. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.